Hi and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the Hogwarts Legacy system requirements that were posted on Steam. Now, before we get into the system requirements, I think there are some things that the average consumer needs to know about this game. One, this game, as you can see here in big, is coming out February 2023. That is next year. That's 5 months away on the 10th of February. So the game is quite a way off from release, so system requirements can change. That is one of the things I would want to bring up and note as soon as I start this video because we are going to go into the system requirements. And please note there is quite a bit of time before the full game is out and the game is out for the public to play. Let's get straight into the system requirements without wasting any time. We have the minimum, recommended, and additional notes. Now, I'm going to just go into this from top down and explain everything that I can to help you out. We are looking at the minimum an i5 8400 and the Ryzen 5 2600. Both these CPUs are comparable in terms of their performance. They are both 6 cores. However, the Ryzen is hyper-threaded. It has 6 cores, 12 threads, whereas the i5 is just 6 cores. Now, a few years ago, they competed relatively well together. I'm going to pull up a benchmark from Hardware Unbox to show this. As you can see, this is Hardware Unbox going with the i5 8400 and the Ryzen 5 2600. At 1080p, as you can see, they're very comparable within small distance of each other at stock. And when you overclock the Ryzen 5, because the Ryzen 5 can overclock and the 8400 cannot, it pulls ahead. So basically, it's a wash. They compete relatively well together. Now, in today's games, because games are a little more CPU demanding in terms of cores and threads, I expect the Ryzen 5 2600 to pull ahead, but I don't expect to be massively different. Now, that's for the minimum CPU requirements. The recommended CPU, they do go full 6-core 12 threads on the 8700 and the R5 3600. This is an improvement from the minimum because one, on Intel you're getting 6 cores 12 threads, and on the Ryzen side the Ryzen 5 3600 is a substantial improvement over the 2600. Yes, they are both 6 cores 12 thread, but the increased cache latency between cores and clock frequency, it's just a world of a difference in terms of single core multi-core performance. So as you can see, that is very important to note. Memory requirements on the minimum side is 8 gigabytes of RAM, nothing special, and the recommended is 16. Again, please take note that this does not account for optimization and memory leaks, and excuse me, that does not really help us till we see the actual game performing. So once you have anywhere between 8 to 16 gigs, you should be fine. Now this is where this game gets very, very, very confusing. As you can see, they have additional nodes and the GPUs. Now on the minimum side, they are recommending a GTX 1070 versus the Vega 56 from AMD. The Vega 56 is a little more powerful, and due to the fact that it has better features in modern games and it was meant for DirectX 12, it usually performs a lot better in DirectX 12 games. So we're not too sure. But we need to take a look at the notes, and this is using 1080p low quality settings, upscale performance setting. Now, I want to take this time to deviate from the specs to explain something to you. We do not have the full list of the PC support features. I've been trying to find a list of what features the game on PC is supporting. We don't know. What Portkey Games has from this website called earlygames.com, they said they haven't identified all the features. However, inside sources have suggested the following features will be available for this next generation RPG: 120 FPS, rumored RTX lighting. Again, not confirmed, and has not been identified by the developer. This also does not tell us whether it's going to be what upscaling technique. It doesn't say if it's temporal or spatial. Hopefully, based on the current release of games such as Spider-Man and a few others, like, I'm trying to make sure I get this correct, God of War, and what's the other one? Death Loop. They all have FSR 2.0. I don't know if this is using a temporal solution like FSR 2.0 or it's using its own built-in temporal scaler. Again, it's usually equivalent to the FSR 2.0. Given that these are not cards that support DLSS, we're going to assume this is a temporal scaler that they built or it's FSR 2.0. Because the GTX 1070 is still relatively more powerful than the GTX 1060, which many people use, this is going to be a very demanding game because they are already saying 1080p 60 FPS, low settings, and you're using upscaling performance setting. That is very demanding, and I want to show you why. This is where the GTX 1070 falls. It is in line with your RTX 3050s, your 1660 Ti's, your 1660 Super. This is where your lower mid-range mainstream cards are. The 1060, 550, 5500 XT, 6500, 980, 1650 Super. That's a good way down. And this is what is needed for 1080p upscale performance setting. And upscaling at 1080p is very rough, even with temporal scalers. So this game seems to be very, very, very demanding on the GPU. However, we don't know what features they have and what settings they have. Hopefully, optimization guides will be able to help us improve this in performance. But yeah, just on the minimum requirements alone, it's very, very demanding. Recommended, they are recommended the GTX 1080 Ti and the 5700 XT. No problem, these GPUs clash head-to-head regularly. Again, it's still only targeting 1080p 60 FPS, but high settings now and the upscale quality is removed to quality. The upscaling technique is going from performance to quality, which is a lot better on temporal scalers, but still could be a bit rough depending on the size of your screen. I'm not too worried about this. It looks okay on a 1080p screen, on 1440p screens if you're going like to do 1080p and you're dropping your resolution. Sometimes it looks bad, but if you're doing a 1440p on a 1440p screen, so it's like you're trying to upscale to 1440p, it looks good. Once you stick to the native resolution of the screen and the upscale is going to there. So once your upscale is not too aggressive, it looks okay. It looks passable, I would say. Doesn't look the best. And this is a big jump because the 1080 Ti is up here. As you can see, I have it now as the baseline, and the 1070 is quite a way down. So this game seems to be pretty demanding, and you need to pay attention to that. The game is a long way off. Again, I said it at the start, 5 months. So take that into account. You have time to upgrade. And everything else is not really noteworthy. The game size is kind of big at 85 gigabytes, but most modern AAA titles are pushing around that 100 gigabyte mark. So you have time to maybe upgrade or see what you could do if this is one of your most anticipated games. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. You know, everyone's different. Now, let's talk about upgrades if you are on a 1060 or a 1070. If you're on those graphic cards, I would recommend you come over and look at the 6600 XT or the 6600 depending on your budget. The RX 6600 has been going for sub $300, so it's usually between the $220 price point to $250. This is just a $240 model from ASRock, pretty affordable, and as you could see in the graphics charts here, it's a big jump over a 1060 or a 1070, and you would get a lot of better performance. As you could see, it's quite a bit better than a 1070. It's about 20%, 30% more performance depending on the game. And it's way ahead of a 1060 because a 1060 is quite down here, 6 gigabyte at 49%, and you could come up way down to the 6600, right? And so yeah, and the 6600 XT is even better than the 1080 Ti. So that's an improvement. If you have a 1080 Ti or something like that, maybe you would want to go up to the 6700 XT, or maybe you would want to go up to a 6800 XT. And those are usually priced a little more. As you can see, it's about $400 for them. This is obviously overpriced on Amazon. Do not pay $500 for this. As you know, prices have been going down. Now, I just want to make a correction to what I said on the upscaling. When you upscale with temporal scalers, what I mean by when you try to stick to reasonable settings is that you don't want to be too aggressive where you're destroying the image quality. Temporal scalers are massively better than spatial scalers. However, at 1080p performance, it becomes very rough because you could obviously tell the image is not native and it does degrade the experience. Whereas high or quality settings versus performance, it may look a lot better. 1440p, because it's an increase in resolution, the scalers look even better as you go up in resolution. So whereas you may not want to use performance at 1080p, you could use performance at 4K because a lot more resolution, a lot more data to work with. So if you're at 1080p, you usually want to stick to at least high or maybe balance, because depending on how good the upscaling technology is and how big your screen is, and if you're using a regular 1080p 24-inch monitor, you should be fine with high quality upscaling. Usually, if it looks good in the game. We have to see how the game implements it. So that's my thoughts on the requirements for this game. If you have any questions, please ask them down below. If you think what you think about how the game is going to run, ask them down below. I don't have a problem. One thing to note, it's saying that it's SSD preferred. Now, some people may have SSD issues, or they may not have a SSD at this point. As you can see, SSDs have been dropping in prices. And if we go to capacity and we ramp that up to at least a 1 terabyte and a SSD and price low to high, you could see that SSD prices are very cheap. Obviously, these are cheap SSDs and they're not going to be the best performing, but they certainly would perform better than a hard drive in most cases. So as you could see, you could just go down, choose one that has good reviews, and you could upgrade your SSD if you're on an older computer. So it's not going to be a big increase for cost, right? So just make sure I cover that. Please note that the game is coming out in 5 months. So there's going to be things that could and will change. And we also don't know the full list of PC features. These are only rumored features, so we don't know everything about what the RTX is, what kind of ray tracing it has. None of that has been really confirmed yet. I hope this video has been useful and helpful to you. As I said before, feel free to ask any questions and have a nice day.